So inshallah this week we continue from where we left off a few weeks ago. The Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now where we are right now, just so that this makes sense, we had talked about the beginning of revelation, meaning the day alayhi salatu wasallam received the first few verses of the Quran. And I talked about the first 5 surahs that he received alayhi salatu wasallam. And I talked about his experience with Waraqah bin Nawfal. And prior to that, his experience with Khadija radiallahu anha, the first Muslim. And I talked about the first few surahs that were revealed after that, Al-Duha wa Sharh, and how they were extremely connected to the difficulties he went through alayhi salatu wasallam early on. And I talked to you about some of the early Muslims, the first couple of people. And I talked about the importance of the significance, of being first, of pioneering something, how important that was. How alayhi salatu wasalam for the first 3 years, it wasn't a matter of being of Islam being a secret, or him moving in a secretive way. No, it was more selective. It was selectivity. Alayhi salatu wasalam was selecting the group of people, the foundation upon which he was going to build Islam, basically, for the future. And that's an important point, because alayhi salatu wasallam was choosing people, and of course he must have had some criteria that he used to choose people. He talked about that, and talked about the idea, or at least for me, that I thought was very, I still find interesting, and I still think about a lot. If you were there, if you had existed during that period, would he have chosen you alayhi salatu wasallam? Would he have given you Islam first, or would he be one of the people who would accept Islam later? It's not. By the way, he offered Islam to people at the beginning that didn't accept it, and accepted it later. But the concept of you being chosen by him, alayhi salatu wasalam, to me it meant something to think about. And after that, I showed you names of some of the early Muslims and Muslimat, both men and women. And this was the list of the men, and then we'll talk about the list of the women in a moment. Because I broke it down for you that it was from 16 different tribes that the Muslims came from. The age group was from 10 years old to 60. The average average was around 25 years old. Mostly youth. Mostly people in their early 20s and teenage years. 50-50 men and women. Almost down to the number. Almost exactly 50-50. These names are important, because these are the names alayhi salatu wasalam will use to build the deen. These names stay by. Meaning they stood by him alayhi salatu wasalam until the bitter end. They never, none of these names at least, were amongst the murtaddeen. None of them were amongst those who left Islam later. Some of these people, as I'm going to go through some of these names quickly, give a small biography for a few of them. Some of them died during his life alayhi salatu wasalam. Some of them outlived him alayhi salatu wasalam. Some of them you know really, really well, and some of them you don't. Some of these names, you only have a few stories, and then even though they existed, all throughout his life, alayhi salatu wasalam, we don't have all the stories about them. And the reason that I wanted to talk about them for a moment is you don't have to be famous in order to be a pioneer. You see, alayhi salatu, when you look at these names, some of these names are extremely known, meaning you can tell a lot of stories about. You can tell stories about Uthman ibn Affan and Zubayr, but you may not know much about Khabbab ibn Arat. You may not have many stories. I may be able to tell you one story in Seerah about this man. Al-Arqam ibn Abi al-Arqam. Okay, Al-Arqam, for example, Ibn Abi al-Arqam, I'll tell you maybe one story about him, and then he vanishes in terms of significant stories. But Al-Arqam, he stands by the Prophet ﷺ during the first 13 years in Mecca. He performs the hijrah. He's there for Badr and Uhud and Khandaq and Ahzab, and he lives way beyond the Prophet ﷺ's life. You don't have a lot of stories to tell about him, but that doesn't mean that this person wasn't one of the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to build the deen on their shoulders. How many know Ramla bint Abi Auf? Not many people know her. But Ramla, not only did she believe in the Prophet ﷺ within the first 50 names, not only was she one of the earliest Muslims, but she also did the hijrah to Habasha. And then she did the hijrah to Medina. She did 2 hijrah. That's very rare. Only a few Sahaba get that level of reward. And she outlives the Prophet ﷺ by a number of decades. And all her children are amongst those who are a part of the Islamic Caliphate and spread knowledge. You don't have to have a known name. There's a beautiful story in Islamic history that happened a number of decades after all this. You see, during one of the battles that Umar ibn Khattab's armies took upon in Persia against the Persian Empire. Because you'll see when we come to the end of this, all the empires that were surrounding the Prophet ﷺ became very, very threatened by this new movement, by what was going on. So there was a lot of tension, political tension, and there were a couple of battles that happened. And after one of those battles, one of the commanders would come back to Umar ibn Khattab, and he would ask him, this is what happened, this is the story. And he asked him, so what happened? Who did we lose? Man istushhid? Who give me the names of the martyrs. So he starts telling him, tustushhid fulan wa fulan wa fulan. He counts names. And then he said, وَمَاتَ غَيْرُهُمْ خَلْقٌ كَثِيرٌ لَا نَعْلَمُهُم. وَاسْتُشْهِدَ غَيْرُهُمْ خَلْقٌ كَثِيرٌ لَا نَعْلَمُهُم. And a lot of other people died, we don't know their names. So that was the the commander. They came back victorious, by the way. يقولون فغضب عمر. He got extremely upset رضي الله عنه. فقال نعم أنت لا تعرفهم. Yes, you don't know them. لكن لهم رب يعرفهم. But they have a Lord who knows them. ويعرف أسماءهم. And he knows their names. ويعرف أسماء آبائهم وأمهاتهم. And he knows the names of their fathers and mothers. وذويهم وأحبابهم. And the names of their children and those who love them. وإن كنا لا نعرفهم. And so what if we don't know them? قال وبقي يقولها. And he spent a few moments saying it. And so what if you don't know them? And so what if you don't know their names? As if to say that they're irrelevant, or because we don't know their names, because they weren't famous, that somehow they don't matter as much. فغضب عمر. No, don't even use that. The way you said it is improper. You don't say it that way. غيرهم كثير. And other people you don't know. What do you mean other people you don't know? Everyone's known to someone. Everyone's equally relevant. Just because they're not famous, they don't. You're gonna say it in that way. You don't have to be famous for you to be a pioneer, for you to be in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala someone extremely important, extremely relevant, and someone who's extremely loved and has high status. That's why I pick up these names. You don't know Amira bint Khalaf. You probably have never heard of Fatima bint al-Mujallal radiyallahu anha wa ardaha. Probably don't know all these names, but that's okay. Doesn't mean anything. It's our mistake, it's our loss that we don't know their names. That's how I have to see it. It's my loss that I don't know the names of the pioneers of whom I owe everything for being a Muslim today myself and my family before me and my family to come after me for many generations. It's because of the perseverance of these people. It's because of their strength and their patience and their grit and the years of sacrifice, both physical, financial and psychological sacrifice that they put forward, that we can enjoy being Muslim today, that we're capable of carrying this deen, these names. I want to talk about a few of them just for the benefit of going through a few of these blessed names. Sa'id bin Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl. Now if I ask you the 10 Mubashirin bil Jannah, which of course is something that didn't exist at this point in the Seerah. We're still in year number 3 of his bi'atha alayhi salatu wasalam. We're 3 years into his prophecy, the first 3 years of his prophecy alayhi salatu wasalam. Year number 1 and 2. If I ask you the 10 Mubashirin bil Jannah, which are the 10 people the Prophet ﷺ many years later in Medina would sit down and call their names. Fulan fil Jannah, Fulan fil Jannah. You talk about Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. And I always do this, by the way. I always do this trivia question. And I ask people to give me the 10 names. And they give me the 10 names and they miss this name. Because Abu Ubaidah Amr ibn Jarrah is known. And Sa'd Abi Waqqas is known. And Zubayr and Talha are known. And Abdul Rahman ibn Auf are known. These are all names that have some level of fame to them. But Sa'id bin Zayd is a name that's forgotten. Even though Sa'id is one of the earliest Muslims. He's before Umar al-Khattab. He is before Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. One of the earliest Muslims. Why I want to talk about him? Because of his dad. I like talking about him for a moment because of his father. His father is Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. And I talked about him once before, a couple of months ago. When I told you that the Prophet ﷺ, before his prophecy, he was extremely interested in those who were still monotheists. I mean those who believed in La ilaha illallah. And they weren't widespread at the time. They existed in Arabia, but they weren't widespread. So he had to seek them out ﷺ. Because he wanted to see people who were similar to him, who had a similar mentality. And amongst the people that he knew at the time was Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. He was an extremely famous man in Arabia. He would speak because he had studied the scripture of previous religions like Waraqah bin Nawfal. He would speak of the time coming soon where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send his final messenger and will correct all these mistakes. You see, when you think about it, for the human mind to accept the idea of worshipping a rock or a tree or any living or non-living thing, for the human mind to stop at that level of, for the human mind to evolve, but stop at the point where you're willing to worship, to claim divine ability and supreme existence, to a thing, to a rock, it means there's something wrong with the way they're thinking. So, paganism, being a pagan or being a shirk, the concept of shirk had to end. And Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, one of the people who spoke of this, because all these individuals, most of these names that you see, early on names, not all of them, but most of them, are descendants of Ismail ibn Ibrahim alayhi salam, who taught Tawheed early on. So Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, one of those people who would challenge Quraysh quite often. He didn't have the fame, he didn't have the strength, but he would challenge them. And the Prophet, but he didn't live long enough for the Prophet ﷺ to give him Islam, because he died prior to that. He died, but his son didn't. His son Sa'id would become one of the first Muslims, one of the earliest. His family would become one of the earliest families to accept Islam. Families, not just an individual, a family. Him and his wife, Fatima bint al-Khattab, would be one of the earliest Muslims. Sa'id would be with the Prophet ﷺ every step of the way. Literally every step of the way he's there, radiallahu anhu. There's not one battle I will talk to you about, there was not one endeavor, not one problem that Sa'id is not there by the Prophet ﷺ. He and his wife, Fatima bint al-Khattab. And when I look at that story, I think of the barakah of his father. Must have been from the effort that his father had put all his life, by challenging the norm of batil at the time, of spending his life trying to correct something that he knew was wrong and deep in his soul. And the Prophet ﷺ would speak of his father, of the fadl, of the bounty that his father had, and he would speak of how Sa'id is obviously the result of that. And you remember, when you listen to this story, you recall quickly, Surah Al-Kahf, and you read it every week, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. When those two orphans, you know the story, when Musa alayhi salam is with Al-Khadr, or the Abd al-Salih, regardless whether we know his name or not. And he goes ahead and amongst the experiences they have is they go into a village and they are thirsty and hungry, and the norm of the time is that if you ask for food or water, they offer it to you and they refused. That's how badly behaved this population was. So instead of leaving and looking for a different place, this man goes with Musa and they find a wall that's almost going to fall over, and he acts like a builder, and he rebuilds the wall again. And Musa, it was the third time, Musa got extremely upset. First thing, you destroy a ship for people who offered us help, and then you commit murder, and now you're building a wall for people who don't deserve it. What's going on? Later on, he would explain to him, given the interpretation. You see, this wall belonged to two orphans, and under it was hidden. There was a treasure of some sort, wealth of some sort. And if this wall was to fall over, then the people of this village, if they're not offering water to someone who's abir sabil, someone who's just passing by, what do you think they're going to do to wealth they find that is only owned by two weak orphans? It's going to be taken. So he rebuilt the wall. So when these people grew up, and these two orphans became a bit more strong, they would be able to find it and take it for themselves. And when the ayah talks about that story, what does it say? It says, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. And their father was a man of piety, was a person of piety. When you look at Sa'id bin Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, the same thought comes to mind. And you'll find a lot of these examples. Sometimes when you're being pious, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're not just doing it for you. You're doing it for more than yourself. It's going to affect more people. Even if you can't see it right now, it will affect those around you. Piety. Not directly. Whether you pray or not, or you do dhikr or not, you read the Quran or not, you follow the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't affect me directly. But indirectly, in the long run, it will affect people around you. And I like the example of Sa'id bin Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, very simple person, extremely poor. Financially, he owned nothing. Radiallahu anhu. He worked as a shepherd. He would take care of a few sheep for the people of Quraysh. And he really didn't own anything. He was a slave for years before, and he was freed, and after that he owned nothing. So he worked and just to eat, just to get by. He didn't have a big family because he was taken away from his family. And he would work like that. And the Prophet ﷺ early on, he and Abu Bakr, he would go around, as I said, selectively talking to certain people. They would come by this young man, and they would ask him, give us some of the milk. And he would say, this is not mine. I don't own this. I don't own these sheep. I cannot offer you anything that they produce. It's not mine to offer. So the Prophet, he was 10 years old. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled to Abu Bakr, because this is something, it's a very mature response for a child. So he tells Abu Bakr, offer him something. So Abu Bakr offers him money. How about we pay you? Give us something to drink. فَقَالَ مَا كَانَ لِي أَنْ آخُذْ. How do I take? It's not mine. I can't take this. I'm not allowed to use this. So when they saw that as a trait that this young boy had, the Prophet ﷺ he explained to him Islam. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was one of the early Muslims. ﷺ was looking for people like this. He was looking for individuals who had a certain level of integrity, who had a moral compass that was clear to them. Sometimes we think that, or the way that we view it, is that Islam is supposed to offer us the moral compass. I'm afraid that's really not the case. I'm afraid morality, I'm afraid that having good ethics and having integrity is something that has to happen before. And if you remember, I talked to you about that when we read Surah Al-Alaq. There's a certain compatibility that we have to have in order for Islam to work for us. Someone who is crooked in their way of life, someone who doesn't mind being corrupt financially or ethically. People like that, whether you offer them Islam or not, doesn't make a difference. Because you can easily use Islam to serve whatever corruption you have, whatever agenda you're looking for. This happens all the time. It happens all the time. The concept of Islam coming and fixing us ethically is true, but it doesn't work on an individual level. It works on a social one. How we make sure that individuals, how we make sure that our youth and our population, our brothers and sisters, and the people that we live with, and ourselves most importantly, have the right ethics, have the right morals, is something that has to be based on the family, has to be based on the community that they're living in. Obviously, Islam teaches sadq and honesty and trustworthiness, obviously, but it's not going to really make a difference if that's not the norm of the surroundings that they're living in. And that's why when you look at this Muslim world today, you see, or you go to a Muslim country and you see a certain level of behavior or a certain type of behavior, and you're wondering how are they behaving like this? How could you be a Muslim and speak like that or act like that or treat others like that? Because that's not how it works. There's more to it than that. The Prophet ﷺ knew that early on. This is a law of the universe, a law of nature. So ﷺ would choose people who had these ethics and morals early on. Examples like Ammar ibn Yasir and his father and his mother, Sumayya bint al-Khayyat. 3 people who had been enslaved many decades prior. And Ammar was born into slavery. And they were all being enslaved. They were all slaves for Abu Jahl, Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham. And they were from the early people who believed in the Prophet ﷺ. From the earliest people. And Ammar ibn Yasir would outlive the Prophet ﷺ for many decades. And Yasir and Sumayya would both die as martyrs early on in the deen. But they stood their ground. And when I tell you the stories of persecution, you'll hear their stories. And you'll know why the Prophet ﷺ chose them, even though they didn't have financial means or social or any other types of means, by the way, at the time. What he was looking for something in character. When he was choosing, there was an issue of character he was interested in, ﷺ. He was looking at grit. He was looking at integrity. He was looking at people who had the right ethics. Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha, one of the early Muslims. We talk about her father a lot. We talk about her sister Aisha. But we don't talk about Asma. Asma dhatul nitaqayn. You'll see her stories. One of the earliest Muslimah. She will marry Zubayr ibn Awam, and her son will be Abdullah ibn Zubayr, one of the people who ruled the Muslim world for a number of years. She's a lady who will speak up against al-Hajjaj at one point. At one point in her life, later on, many years later, when she's old, she'll stand up and speak against one of the biggest persecutors of the land at the time. One of the worst dictators that came by the land at the time, Asma bint Abi Bakr. All these names are the names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to build the deen on. And it's important for us to know them. It's important for us to take a look at how they were raised, what they did to make the Prophet ﷺ choose them, and then how they continued their lives later, many years later. And to make sure that our youth know these names, because they know a lot of other names that are nothing even close to them. Radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. So these are the early Muslims that the Prophet ﷺ would build the foundation of Islam upon. All right. I'm going to talk about a few surahs that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ during this period. Just because you know them, and because you recite them quite often, and those who know Juz' Amma will find them. It's not something they read every day. A lot of Juz' Amma was revealed early on. And from the earliest surahs that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, maybe number 6 or 7, was Surah At-Takwir. Now I've explained Surah At-Takwir in other halaqat a couple of times. I'm going to run quickly through the meaning of Surah At-Takwir, because it's very important. Surah At-Takwir and all the surahs after in Juz' Amma, from At-Takwir over to Buruj, all these surahs talk about one concept in Islam. And the concept is the sanctity of freedom of choice. I'm not talking from a political perspective. I'm talking from a religious one. Meaning the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us all to choose. We don't live based on instinct alone. Other creatures do. All other creatures do. But we have metacognition. Go look it up. It's where you're capable of wondering about wondering and thinking about thought. And contemplating about the fact that why is it that I'm here, what I'm doing. No other creature does that. There are no ostriches walking the land wondering why they can't fly. There's no animal that's unhappy with the way they look, or with what food they eat, or the place or the habitat that they live in. They don't try to leave where they are. They live by the instincts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put within them. But the human being does not. Because we have a different level of cognition as humans. Understanding that we have a margin of freedom of choice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. Understanding that freedom of choice is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gift to myself and to you. To choose what you will is extremely important. Because I come from a generation, now maybe you don't share this with me, but I come from a generation that spent most of their lives waiting for things to happen. We were waiting for things. Waiting for change, and waiting for opportunities, and waiting for nasr, and waiting for faraj, and waiting, and none of it came. And none of it came because waiting is not our job, and waiting has nothing to do with it. And waiting is the worst thing you could ever do. Because waiting is a choice as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us here to make choices. And the choices we make, He will later ask us about them. If you feel that you're not in control of your life, or if you feel that you're insignificant, or the choices that you make don't mean anything, then you haven't understand the basics of what Islam is about. The only valuable thing that you and I actually possess in this life is our ability to make choices. Is our ability to have a conviction, to believe in something, and then to live our lives trying to achieve that one thing. That's the only thing that we actually possess. Everything else is variable. Everything, your health, your wealth, your social status, where you live, how long you live, you can't control any of that. You can try. And you should try. We all strive towards trying to control that as much as we can. But at the end, ask someone in their late age. Ask them, how much of that were you able to control? And they'll laugh at you. Even the most successful of them, they will laugh at you. They'll tell you nothing. I was able to predict nothing of my life. I gave a khutbah a few weeks ago, in 2009, on the 31st of December, 2009, I sat down and I wrote what I wanted to be in the beginning of 2020. Because the next day was the first day of 2010, so I wanted to make my plan for 2020. I achieved nothing. Wallahi, nothing. If that night someone came to me and told me on New Year's Eve of 2020, you're going to be in the state I am right now, I would have laughed. I would have mocked that person. Impossible. My country destroyed. What are you talking about? Impossible. Seerah, not a chance. I'm going to be outside of my village. I'm still going to be a resident in medical school. I'm still going to. The only thing I achieved is I married my wife, by the way. That's the only thing I got. Just good enough, to be honest with you. I could say to myself I'm a failure. You could say the same. But the reality of it is that you can't control a lot. What you can control on this journey of the 10 years are your convictions, what you believe in, what you stand for, and what you're willing to continue to do with your life. Wherever you may be, and whatever the circumstances are, if you know what you stand for and who you are and what you're here to do, you will do it no matter how lost you may feel, no matter how poor, no matter how sick or tired or persecuted you are, you'll continue to do the right thing. And really there's nothing else. And there's nothing more to life than what I just told you. There's really nothing more. Surah Al-Takwir is one of those early surahs that would come and make a huge build-up. It's a beautiful surah, it just builds up. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ It starts talking about things when this happens. When the sun is destroyed. It's brought down into a small ball. And when the stars start to fall. And when the mountains in all their strength and glory and all the solidness of the mountains turn into nothing, turn into air, turn into cotton. وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ Each one is saying something that's going to happen يوم القيامة. Something grand that you and I view as magnificent and strong and larger than you and I, we brought to its knees. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ And when the ocean is on fire, when water is going to burn. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ And when the child that was buried alive. At the time there was a horrible trend that was happening. And they would bury very young newborns out of fear of poverty and shame. And you may say it's over, alhamdulillah, they're not doing it anymore, but they're still doing it today, just in a different form. Children are still being buried alive, just differently, with a different mechanism, but it's still happening. It's just their homes are coming down on them. It's the same thing. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ, and when that buried child is asked يوم القيامة بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, based on what mistake you made that you were killed? What was your sin, O child, that caused them to kill you? Of course, it's a rhetorical question. There is none. But maybe the question is not for the child. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking this question. It's a very scary one. It's only once in the Quran. And if you've listened to the recitations of Abdul Basit, Abdul Samad, you'll know he'll build up to it. He'll read it all in one continuation to come to that point. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. Maybe it's not, the question is not for her or for the child that was murdered. Maybe it's for everyone else who had a choice in the matter, because she's the only one, because that child that died is the only person within this whole story who had no choice at all. They had no choice at all in what happened to them, but everyone else did. Everyone else had a choice. And the surah continues to build, coming to the last verse in it. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And the only reason that you choose is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen that you can choose. We use this verse in the opposite way. We have so misunderstood our Quran to the point where this ayah is actually used as evidence to oppose the point I'm trying to make. Meaning when I talk about choice, someone will say, you can only choose if Allah wants you to choose. Yes, exactly. You know what I mean? Our choices are only whatever Allah wants. Yes, what does Allah want? He wants you to choose. That's what He wants. That's what He gave you. He gave you the ability to choose. That was His choice, subhanahu wa ta'ala. You choose because He chose for you the ability to choose. Are you understanding the difference of the way you look at it? When we look at our lives, I have no control over anything. Why? وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. I can only choose if He chooses. Yes, true. How are you using that as evidence for the fact that you have no choice? Explain that to me. How do you understand that from the surah? The opposite is what the surah, literally the opposite. He chose for you to choose. Enjoy it. Enjoy this privilege, because it's short-lived. It's a short-lived privilege. But we actually, think about it, what do we actually choose in our lives? How many things do you have the ability to fully choose? Even when it comes to our choices, they're limited. So many things are chosen for us and you can't impact. And then we're not going to even take responsibility for the choices we can and are making. There's nothing else you're going to be asked about Yawm al-Qiyamah but the choices. When they talk about the suhuf nushirat, when the books come into your hand, inshallah in the yameen, inshallah everyone in their yameen, qulu ameen, inshallah everyone in their yameen. But if it comes in a different hand or whatever hand it comes into, and they say, well, how could your life be broken down into a book? It's not that hard. How many choices did you actually make that were fully your own choice? A lot of stuff you didn't choose, so it's not going to be in the book. There's a lot of parts of your life that you had nothing to do with. It just happened. That's how it worked out. Wasn't me. This is what I was given. I don't think it's that hard for Him to compress, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the choices that we made. It's not that difficult. The sanctity of choice, of free will. We are all going to be held accountable for the choices we're making today. And there's nothing more to life than that. Every choice you make today is something that's going to come back Yawm al-Qiyamah, and you have to defend it. You have to explain why you made that choice. Why didn't you make another one? What were you doing during when this was happening or that was happening? What were you thinking when you made that choice? What was your intention? What were you looking for? There's nothing more to life. And if a Muslim society, if a Muslim community, if I myself was raised in a generation where we felt that we didn't really choose anything, because everything was chosen for you, your clothes were chosen, your food, your parents chose what specialty you were going to study. Many people, their wives are chosen for them, where they're going to live is chosen for them. They feel like they own nothing, so they live and they don't mind making mistakes because they don't feel they're in charge. It's difficult to raise children, empowering them, making them feel that their choices, that they're responsible for their choices. It causes a lot of difficulty. But you raise people of strength when you do so. And if you decide to control your children's lives, yes, less problems, I agree. Less of a headache because they just do what you want. But you raise weak individuals who don't feel that they're in charge of their own lives, who don't feel that their choices matter, that they should be making conscious choices every day of their lives, and their decisions are extremely important. And that's where we are right now. That's where we are. 15, 16, 20, 25, and still not doing much. Doesn't feel responsible for much. Well, why? Why is that? I have answers for you. I'm not going to share it with the kids here. But think about it. This is important. The Quran there is filled with surahs, but this is one of the early ones. Early surah. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. You choose only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for you that. The Lord of the worlds chose that. And that's what they learned from it. The Sahaba start to feel my choices matter. I have to, and that's why they felt valuable. We took that and completely twisted the meaning to a point where it doesn't work anymore. Another early surah, Al-A'la, Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la. One of the early surahs that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. These are the things he's sharing with those names. What I'm trying to explain to you is that these names, these are the stuff they learned early on. It's not just that they memorized the surah and recited it properly with tajweed. No, it was more than that. It was the concept that the surah was teaching. It was the actual benefit of it, understanding something new, something being emphasized and explained as a part of the deen. You choose, you're responsible for it. We're all going to be held accountable, and there's nothing else. Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la. Exalt the name of your highest Lord. The whole surah is in those two words, by the way. All the rest of his commentary. I'm not going to go through, I don't want to bore everyone here with the tafsir, but I want you to understand the idea. It's tasbeeh. You understand that one of the, probably almost one of the only differences that exist between a Muslim or a religious individual and a non-religious individual, or a Muslim and non-Muslims, whether they are religious or not, is the concept of tasbeeh, of understanding what it means to exalt Allah subhanahu, exaltation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it has extreme consequences on behavior. You're wondering, what is it tasbeeh? We sit down and do subhanallah. No, I'm not talking about that. It's a good thing. Do it after prayers. Do it before you go to sleep. Do it in the morning. Perfect. You should do it as much as you can. But if the idea is not clear to you, then there's no point of it. Tasbeeh means that anything that happens in this life, you do not turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in blame. Whatever happens that doesn't go your way, whatever you see that you don't like, and there are many things that are happening to you, around you, that you do not like, that you do not enjoy, that you may have a problem with, do you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and object and wonder why He allowed it and why He did it? And there must be something wrong, and maybe in His creation it's not complete, maybe He didn't perfect the deen, maybe He didn't perfect the law? Or do you look at yourself and wonder how you could have been better? How you could have acted in a more productive way? Or do we turn to ourselves and wonder where we went wrong? Which is it? This is a vital question that you will encounter every day in your life. And I talk with youth a lot, and I can see those who are going to do well with that and those who aren't. And not just youth, I can talk to people who are older, and I can see who's going to do well with it and who's not. Who has the ability to self-regulate, to be mindful, to ask what they could have done more, and those who are expecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to treat them in a certain way, who have expectations for God. I'm a Muslim, I'm a good person, I expect 1, 2, and 3 to work out for me. That's a musibah. That way of thought is a musibah. Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la. You exalt the name of your highest Lord. You exalt Him. Go through the surah yourself, and you'll see the meanings being repeated. I just want you to understand the concept. We build our deen on tasbeeh. Whatever happens that we don't like, subhanallah. Subhanallah is not because you saw something that you thought was beautiful or weird. That's not the right usage for it. That's not why you're using it. You don't see some weird thing and say, oh, subhanallah. That's not that. You can say it, but that's not why it's there. That's not the proper usage of that word. Subhanallah is when you see something that you don't agree with, or something happens that you're not happy with, or you're wondering why that happened, and and shaitan throws a doubt in your heart, or you have a question that is not proper. You say, subhanallah, I don't blame Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is exalted. He does not make mistakes. He does not have faults, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Faults are from me. It's not from Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're the ones who can do better. Oh, well, this was a natural phenomenon and it caused disaster. You're going to blame God for that? Is that how you think? By the way, many people think like that. It's His fault. These words are said, Jalla Jalalullah. Taqaddas subhanallah. That's where the word becomes important. Subhanallah, no, I don't do that. As a Muslim, I will not cross that line ever. Ever. As a Muslim, you'll never do it. No matter what happens, you don't turn to God and blame. The only time the Prophet ﷺ would get upset is an example of that within these first 13 years. I'll tell the story when it comes, and I'll tell it now as well. When Khabbab ibn al-Arat came to the Prophet ﷺ after he was horribly persecuted. I'll leave the horrific part of the story when I talk about persecution later. But he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he was horrifically persecuted. And ﷺ saw him and he felt for him, he sobbed with him, and he helped him up because he couldn't walk anymore. So Khabbab would say something down the lines of the following. He would say, Ya Rasulullah, ila mata? O Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until when? Until when will we stay like this? See, he didn't necessarily object. But maybe you can take it from the way he said it. Maybe the way he said it to the Prophet ﷺ, there was something wrong there. No, you don't say that. And he got upset. And he told him, there are people before you who went through more than what you went through. And they stood by their deen. And they passed away. And they never said that. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. But you're showing me that you have no patience. And the man had just gone through something so horrific, I don't even want to share today. Why? Because one of the concepts that this deen was built on is Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. I don't object. That's why you do ruku'. The whole point of ruku', the whole point of that movement in prayer is to do that. You just say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. So you don't make dua in ruku'. You're not allowed to make dua in ruku'. You're not allowed to read Quran in ruku'. You're not allowed to say Alhamdulillah. You only say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim and anything else that is similar to it. Exalting the Almighty. Subuhun Qudusun Rabbul Malaikati wal Ruh. Subhana Dil Jabaruti wal Malakuti wal Kibriyai wal Azama. These are things that the Prophet ﷺ taught as well. And they all have the same meaning. I exalt my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. The unique, the one who is faultless. Because it has to be something you teach yourself. That's how I think. As a Muslim, I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the way we're supposed to think. As a Muslim, I don't accept ever turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and blame, ever. Whether khair comes to me or shar comes to me, I don't turn to him and wonder why he didn't treat me better. I don't have expectations for him. He has expectations for me. Who's being judged here? Are we here to judge God to see how well he's going to let us live our lives? Or are we here to be judged by him yawm al-qiyamah? Which one is it? Which one is it? And I've seen people lose their faith over masa'ib. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that none of us go through that. Say ameen inshallah. And you can say in your life, in your heart, inshallah, I'll never do it. Say that because it's a nice intention to have. But you don't know for sure. You see, when calamities hit in life, what they do, have you ever been with someone and then their status changes and then they change and then you come and say something like, Wallah, dunya ghayyaratuhu. Life changed him, wealth changed him. Something changed this person or changed her. That's not really what happens. Life doesn't change you. Listen very carefully. It exposes you. It exposes us. That's all it does. It doesn't change. It just exposes something that there was no opportunity for it to show itself. If I have in my heart a certain level of shuh or bukhl, of cheapness or selfishness, maybe the situation I'm in right now, it's covered, it's not exposed, because I'm wealthy, because I'm doing well. So you don't know. I may be someone who's cheap. You don't know. Maybe right now I'm giving money away because I have it. But one day maybe things change, and then I'm not as generous. You say, "Well, dunya ghayyaratu." No, life didn't change me. It just exposed me. Life doesn't. Very rarely does life change people. It exposes something that was hidden for a long time. It's a very different thing. That's why Sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la is something you need to work on. My younger brothers and sisters, work on it now, because life is going to throw you a couple of curveballs. I guarantee it for you. Allow me to be the bearer of bad news for you tonight. Life is going to throw you curveballs. Life is going to make you throw you a couple of obstacles, make you fall down a couple of times. Let's see how are you going to deal with it? What are you going to say? لننظر أصدقت أم كنت من الكاذبين أشكر أم أكفر. The Quran is full of Allah subhanahu gave this to me to see. Am I going to be grateful or am I going to be someone who's not? Am I someone who's honest and guided or am I someone who's not? That's what life's there for. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Tasbeeh, the concept of exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what it means is you're preparing yourself. When things don't go your way, you don't turn to Him in objection. You're not upset with God. You don't have an issue with Him. You're not wondering why He didn't do this or why He didn't give you that. No. You turn to yourself and you try to be better. You take the musibah, you turn it into an act of sabr so you get ajr yawm al-qiyamah. سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى. One of the early surahs in the Quran. That's what it talks about. I'm not going to go through the verse by verse, but that's the idea within it. Another early surah, Surah Al-Layl. See, all the kids know these surahs. Early on, one of the first things he heard, alayhi salatu wasalam. So far, I've only shared with you 10 surahs. These are the first 10. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنثَى إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. Indeed, by the night as it covers everything, and by the morning when it brings light to everything, and everything that went into the creation of every male and female. He takes an oath by all life and all the movement of life, the movement of day and night and everything that was created, every living thing. إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. Indeed, your ways in life are many, are variable. Everyone has a different way of living. We all do. That is a fact. He's not saying, oh, shame on you, you have different ways of life. No, that's the fact. We are different. We live differently. We think differently. We have different cultures and different ways. We're just different. And that is fine. That's how He wants it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But should there not be at least a few things that are constant amongst all of us? Should there not be a couple of things? Should there not be a standard that we all adhere to within our differences, in order for our differences to actually be beneficial and not be harmful and not be detrimental? In order for our differences to actually help us thrive and be prosperous, there has to be a standard. The standard the surah explains is taqwa. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى. And at the end of the surah, وَسَيُجَنَّبُهَا الْأَتْقَى. Piety. What is piety? Taqwa is a very simple idea. Very, very simple. Before you make any decision, before you decide to do something, you ask yourself one basic question. Is this something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not want? Is this something haram? Is this something that will cause Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be angry with me? Yughdabullah. Is it? If the answer is no, go ahead. If the answer is yes, you stop. Even if the answer is yes later, meaning even if it's something that will later, preventatively, if it's going to later, subsequently in the future, cause you to make to be in fault and to be on sin, you stop. Taqwa has the idea of preventativeness. You know, preventative medicine, we do it all the time. It's the best type. That's why you get vaccines. You don't wait until you have polio. We fix it before it happens. It's better. It's better financially. It's better physically. We all know just try and stop the problem before it happens. After it happens, it's damage control. It's damage control. When someone comes to me before they make the sin or before they make the mistake, we can still fix this. We can find a way out. They come to me after they make the mistake. It's hard. It becomes very difficult. We can offer a solution, but it's hard. It's case by case, and it doesn't always work. The concept of taqwa is your wiqaya. That's what the word in Arabic means. Wiqaya is to prevent something. So prevent punishment for yourself. Prevent being on the wrong side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's satisfaction. Don't be on the wrong side. Don't be in the wrong. Before problems happen, take a step back and make sure you're in the right. Don't remember after the mistake is done. Don't remember after you're already way too deep in. I told you a few weeks ago, I think the leading reason for Muslim youth to leave Islam is not intellectual problems. It's not the issue of aqeedah. As important as theology and the questions of philosophy are, it's not that. In my experience, by far, it's sin. By far, it's sin. We don't help them do taqwa. We don't prevent them from making their mistakes. We don't help them prevent themselves from making mistakes, and then they're too deep into it. And they can't live with this guilt anymore. They know it's wrong, they shouldn't be doing, but they can't stop it. There's too much guilt. What's going to happen when there's too much guilt? What happens? Either you find some way to stop it, and that's hard, or you get rid of the guilt. How do you get rid of the guilt? You get rid of whatever's causing the guilt. You get rid of the deen, because Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's haram, don't do that. And you're doing it every day. You're feeling guilty. If you're Muslim, you're feeling guilty because I shouldn't be doing this. It's only a matter of time before you either actually make a change in your life, and it's hard to make these radical changes and get rid of horrible habits. It's not easy. And of course, unfortunately, our communities don't offer any help, which is another problem. It's not like we have set up in our communities ways for those who are suffering from any sin, to help them out of it. We actually scrutinize, and we don't treat them properly. We start looking at them and we condescend towards them and we make them feel worse. We actually contribute to them leaving instead of setting up support systems so they can find a way back. Now, if we're not going to help them prevent it, at least help them fix it later. But if we can't do either, what do you think they're going to do? No one can live with guilt forever. It'll drive you insane. So you get rid of the guilt and they get rid of the deen and they find some way to disbelieve. They find some way, some question that the Shaykh didn't answer properly for them. And they'll use that and they'll leave Islam. And I've seen it so many times. You probably know people in your life like that as well. I'm probably not telling you something you don't know tonight. At-taqwa. These were the concepts they were being taught. That's the only reason I'm sharing these surahs with you. Because these are the early stuff. You want to learn the Quran, this is what they were taught early on. Your choices are sacred. You exalt your Lord, you blame yourself, you be better. You don't blame God for whatever's happening. And you live with taqwa. You prevent harm for yourself and for others. You ask that question, will this cause harm? Punishment Yawm al-Qiyamah is harm. Prevent it. Prevent harm. Don't ask the question after. It's just not, you're not getting enough for your buck. It's not a good transaction to ask later. Tawbah is always open. You can always make tawbah. But it's way better to just have taqwa. It's way better just to prevent yourself from doing something that will cause you harm. All right. Surah At-Teen. Wat-Tini was Zaytun. All the children know what Tini was Zaytun. وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم. في أحسن تقويم. Indeed, we created the human being in the best what? What's taqweem? Is taqweem the way you look? Is taqweem your picture, the way your physicality? No, not at all. Taqweem has nothing to do with that at all. No way in Arabic can taqweem mean that. There's no way. There's literally no way for it to do it. Taqweem, you ever heard taqweem isnan? When they fix you're fixing something. You're helping something function. Your teeth aren't functioning, so you do taqweem. Your back hurts, so you do taqweem of your back so it works, so it's functional. Taqweem has everything to do with functionality, has nothing to do with the way you look. I mean, you think the Prophet ﷺ had never seen someone who was born with a deformity? Deformities have existed from the beginning of time. He created us, subhanahu wa ta'ala, ahsan taqweem. He created us in the best way for us to serve our purpose, for us to do our job. He gave us all the tools. He gave us everything we need to do what He wants us to do, subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is amanu wa amilu salihat. And if we don't do it, then ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. If you don't do it, then your nature, your human nature, the nature of the earth that you were created from will take you down to the lowest of the lows. Because your nature inside wants you to be selfish. It wants you to be greedy, it wants you to be lazy. It's lustful. And if you return to that, then you've lost everything. However, He created you in the best form for you to be able to serve your purpose. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all these rules. He made all these laws. أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ Allah is the one who puts the law, who makes the law. Who is the most wise of the ones who make the law? Isn't it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You think He would make you a law that would harm you? You think He would tell you to do something that would be harmful for you in your life? And you think that? Do you actually believe that He would tell you don't drink alcohol, and drinking alcohol is beneficial for you? You think that? You think that doing that would be helpful? And He would say no, don't do it? Do you think He would make something haram, and that thing that's haram actually, if we did it, would be awesome for everybody? How could we think that? When he makes the law subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's making the law because that has your best interest in it. And He created you in the best form to serve your purpose like that. This is what the surah is teaching. Every single law to come after this surah, they knew. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes zina haram. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to offer our life for His sake and living life properly. All the difficult rulings, when He talks about hijab subhanahu wa ta'ala, you think this is being talked about because it's harmful? Because it goes against the best interest of the person who's being told not to do it? Or is it within your best interest? Which is it? أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Isn't He most wise of the ones who decree laws? Of course He is subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when He gives the law, this law is in your best interest, it's in my best interest. He created us perfectly in synchrony with these laws so we can perform them properly. That's what the surah is teaching. I imagine sometimes that the Sahaba, when they were listening to this early on, when they were hearing the Prophet ﷺ recite these verses and explain to them the concepts, I can only imagine how they were slowly changing, how these concepts were being taken in and becoming a part of the way of their mentality, of their way of life, of who they were. And I believe with certainty that that's why these names, the names I shared with you, these names stayed Muslim till the end. None of these names walked away. I will share with you names who came in later, or names who accepted Islam and left later, or had problems with it, or weak, but not these ones, no. They got the prime experience. They were pioneers, they got the first couple of stuff, they were taught the important things. You choose, you're responsible for your choice, so you start taking life seriously. Allah is exalted, I don't blame Him, I blame myself, I become better. I prevent harm from happening. I understand that all the laws that are put there are for my best interest. And I am created suitably to fulfill my purpose on earth. To be the best person I can be. Doesn't matter how you look and how much money you got. Before I end, I'll kind of open up with what we're talking about next week, inshallah. Alayhi salatu wasalam would start with his family. You're going to ask all his family to become Muslim. All of Bani Hashim. All of his uncles, aunts, great uncles and great aunts. So he would invite, he would prepare a feast at his home. Khadija radiallahu anha would prepare food, and his daughters and would help him out, would help out preparing the feast, and he would call in all of his relatives. Everybody would come in. So you can see Abu Talib coming and his children. You can see Al-Hamza, you can see Abbas, you can see Al-Harith, some of the uncles maybe you don't know about. You can see Arwa and Atika and Safiya, all these ladies, everyone's coming in. They're all coming, it's a nice day. All the families there, it's a huge family, they're going to eat at the Prophet Muhammad's house. As I said, it's not secret. Alayhi salatu wasalam offers everyone to start eating. They're eating, everyone's chatting. Alayhi salatu wasalam is going to prepare himself to talk to them. He wants to offer them. So he gets up, alayhi salatu wasalam. He barely stands up before he says anything. Another person stands up on the other side of the room and begins to speak. Now the person who stands up on the other side of the room is Abu Lahab, Abdul Uzza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet ﷺ's uncle. Now Abu Lahab, there's a lot to talk about. Abu Lahab did his thing. He's the only name in the Quran, by the way, during that period that exists in the Quran. On the opposite side. Abu Jahl, horrible. Where's Abu Jahl in the Quran? No. Where's his name? His name is not there. I'm talking about names. Where's Al-Walid ibn Mughira's name? No. Where's Uqba Abi Mu'ayt? No. Where's Al-As ibn Wa'il? None of them. The only name we have, Abu Lahab. You know the surah. We'll talk about it inshallah soon. He stands up and he begins to say this. لا طاقة لنا بالعرب. We have no ability to fight all of the Arabs. We don't have the ability to do that. لا طاقة لنا بالعرب. وليس أحد أتى على قومه وأهله بشر مما جئت به. And O Muhammad, no one has brought to his family and to his people anything worse than what you have brought to your family and people. That's what he says to the Prophet ﷺ in his house. Very rude. You agree? At least rude. Wouldn't do that. And then he would say something even worse. He would say, اكتموا هذا الفم وأمسكوا هذا اللسان قبل أن تعاديكم العرب. Shut this mouth and hold this tongue before all of Arabs become your enemies. He's speaking of the Prophet ﷺ. In his home, he just ate his food. That's what he says. So the Prophet ﷺ, of course we'll talk about the implications of what he said at that point. It's very important. What would he say? He would say, أكملوا طعامكم. Please complete your meals. وانصرفوا بارك الله فيكم. And you can leave whenever you're done. May Allah bless you. He wasn't going to start Islam with a fight with his uncle. No. He's not starting this with a family quarrel. No. I'm going to count for you the strikes. If baseball has 3, Abu Lahab got way more. Abu Lahab will continue to harm the Prophet ﷺ personally and openly time after time. And you will see how alayhi salatu wasalam, not once will he even stare him down. Forget about answering him. Forget about actually debating or saying something back. He wouldn't even stare in his eyes. He wouldn't look to Abu Lahab in his face, not once. And it's not his father, it's his uncle. And you're going to see the number of times you're going to say, at some point you're going to get upset. Because I remember when I studied the Seerah, at one point I got upset. I'm like, that's enough. If I was there, I would have slapped him. Khalas, that's too much. There should be some level of decency. No decency at all. He begins, before the Prophet got the opportunity to say something, he stands up and he tells people, make him shut up. Sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. How rude and how horrible. You have to endure this, alayhi salatu wasalam. Please eat and leave. It failed. The first time around, it didn't work out. And he would try again, and we'll talk about the second try, inshallah, next time.